Carlson, please come out on the stage. He's standing there as well. Dr. Carlson.
That's what Washington, D.C. does. The drive-by shot at the beginning with incorrect and incomplete information, and then the memorized 25-second speech that is exactly what is advised and saying.
Here's the bottom line. This notion that Barack Obama doesn't know what he's doing is just not
there
true.
It is.
He knows exactly what he's doing.
The memorized 25-second speech.
To think that I would just walk away 10 minutes before the caucus and say, forget about you guys. I mean, who would do something like that?
Ben is a good and honorable man. When this transpired, I apologized to him then, and I do so now. Ben, I'm sorry.
How tough is it to take elected property from an elderly woman?
Let me talk. Quiet.
How tough is it?
A lot of times. Shush.
Shush, no quiet, no talking. And well, here was the moment that started it all off last night. ABC probably has some big problems. It was hard for them to hear, so Dr. Ben Carlson couldn't come out on stage. He didn't hear his name being called, so Senator Ted Cruz walks on by, and then everyone else walks on by.
Oh, it's just so awkward to watch and painful, and initially you feel so bad for Dr. Carlson. You think, oh, come on, just go. The stage manager is telling you to go. But then you realize he must not be able to hear because Donald Trump, you know, kind of got blocked here, too, and he hung out. He didn't realize what was going on. Then the hosts say, all right, here are your GOP contenders, and 3 of the podiums were empty, and Governor Kasich hadn't walked out there either.
I mean, I'm sure, and Tucker joining us this morning from Manchester, New Hampshire, I mean, it must have been loud in there, and Dr. Ben Carlson, you interviewed him, he said he couldn't hear anything.
But nothing bothers Dr. Carlson. He must have a resting heartbeat of 9 beats a minute. He is the calmest person I've ever met. It's very unusual. I've never met a candidate like that. Yeah, it looked completely awkward, but he seemed totally unbothered by it.
You know, Christie may not have a resting heartbeat of 9 beats per minute, especially after last night's debate.
Probably not someone you want to get into an altercation with, Christie. Whether you support him or not someone to tangle with.
Yeah, well, this round of firing is what everybody's going to be talking about this morning, the sparring between Governor Christie and Senator Marco Rubio. Watch.
Simply does not have the experience to be president of the United States and make these decisions.
I think the experience is not just what you did, but how it worked out. Under Chris Christie's governorship of New Jersey, they've been downgraded 9 times in their credit rating.
That's what Washington, D.C. does. The drive-by shot at the beginning with incorrect and incomplete information, and then the memorized 25-second speech.
Chris, your state got hit by a massive snowstorm 2 weeks ago. You didn't even want to go back. They had to shame you into going back. This notion that Barack Obama doesn't know what he's doing is just not true.
There it is.
He knows exactly
what he's doing. There it is, the memorized 25-second speech.
Well, that's the thing everyone's talking about this morning is that memorized 20-second speech, as Governor Christie said. So let's put this in context. Let's play Marco Rubio repeating the same line over and over and over again last night. Watch.
Let's dispel once and for all with this fiction that Barack Obama doesn't know what he's doing. He knows exactly what he's doing. This notion that Barack Obama doesn't know what he's doing is just not true.
There it is.
Let's dispel with this fiction that Barack Obama doesn't know what he's doing. He knows exactly what he's doing. He is trying to change this country. He wants America to become more like the rest of the world. Anyone who believes that Barack Obama isn't doing what he's doing on purpose doesn't understand what we're dealing with here.
And Tucker, it even inspired a Twitter account called @RubioGlitch, and it just kind of repeated what he said every time that he said it.
You know, we'll see if this actually hurts Senator Rubio, but here's the context. So the donor class in New York, the intellectual class in Washington of the Republican Party despises Donald Trump. They really don't like Ted Cruz, so they're looking for someone to get behind. It looked like coming out of Iowa that was going to be Marco Rubio. Here's why this attack could resonate. Republicans have spent 8 years going after President Obama for being glib but shallow. He's got no experience. He never did anything. He was a community organizer. He's great with the teleprompter. That's basically the same attack you saw Christie level at Rubio last night. Sure, you're articulate. Sure, you're handsome. Sure, you're a nice guy, but you haven't actually done anything. Now, I don't know, again, if that's going to stick, but if there was a potentially weak spot you would go after Senator Rubio on, it's that. Nobody has done it until last night. And Chris Christie, when he goes on attack, boy, he does not hold back. He's really good at it. He's really tough. I'm not sure it's going to help him, but it might hurt Rubio.
Yeah, and whether it was the message or the actual delivery, I mean, to be fair, I would say we see a lot of these candidates while they're out on the campaign trail at their town hall meetings, and they have very similar responses to the questions from their audience or the questions from the interviews when they come on this program, and then you hear almost the same thing on the debate stage. I think the problem was that Governor Christie called Senator Rubio on it, and then it rattled him, and he just continued to do it even more than he normally would have, possibly.
Yeah, and then there were some also rattling moments last night for Senator Ted Cruz. Questions you're probably not getting in these town hall meetings on how that he would handle, how a President Ted Cruz would handle enhanced interrogation or torture. And he kind of stumbled. He kind of stumbled at the very beginning, and then Donald Trump seemed like he had a pretty solid answer on it. Watch the two of them back to back.
If elected president, would you bring it back?
I would not bring it back in any sort of widespread use. And indeed, I joined with Senator McCain in legislation that would prohibit line officers from employing it.
The medieval times. I mean, we studied medieval times. Not since medieval times have people seen what's going on. I would bring back waterboarding, and I'd bring back a hell of a lot worse than waterboarding.
A hell of a lot worse than waterboarding.
It was really a fascinating moment. You know, the press treats Cruz like he's this far-out, right-wing reactionary wacko, and yet he's a constitutionalist, and he's a lawyer, and he's a scholar, and he gave a pretty thoughtful answer, actually. He wants to restrain the government's ability to use enhanced interrogation techniques. I'm not sure it worked that well on stage, but it's not really what a lot of people would expect from a guy who's endorsed carpet bombing. I mean, it was much more nuanced. Trump, on the other hand, you thought, you know, waterboarding was tough? I'm going medieval on those guys. He's basically making the pitch he does in every question, which is, I'm on America's side. I'm for America. It doesn't matter what it takes. We're going to prevail. I think it's probably more effective in a debate, but it did say something kind of unexpected about Ted Cruz. I'm sure it'll be missed in all the barking about the debate last night, but I thought it was really revealing.
Yeah, the Iron Maiden. I don't know if that's one of the things he's planning on bringing back.
The tough-talking billionaire businessman is going to be on the program at 8:30 Eastern Time this morning, so make sure you stay tuned for that.
All right, Tucker is up there in Manchester, New Hampshire. Great seeing you. Go get warm. He's out.
Oh, it's freezing.
Enjoy the snow. Yeah, it's so picturesque.
Go get your decaf this morning, Tucker. We'll see you in a few moments. But first, Donald Trump, he once again got into it with Jeb Bush.
You got it. Rich Edson is live in Manchester with even more of the night's biggest highlights. Good morning, Rich.
Good morning, Clayton and Anna. And, you know, they really got into it over what is usually a local issue. That is one of eminent domain, and that really allows the government to take over private property by compensating the owner, but it's for public use, as it's stated. And so Bush hit Trump on the issue, especially his use of it running a casino in Atlantic City.
Eminent domain is an absolute necessity for a country.
What Donald Trump did was use eminent domain to try to take the property of an elderly woman.
Jeb wants to be, he wants to be a tough guy. He wants to be a tough guy tonight.
How tough is it to take property from an elderly woman?
Let me talk. Quiet.
So it got a little nasty there, but Trump then argued that essentially eminent domain is used by the government to build things that especially Republicans support, like the Keystone Pipeline. But this thing started with some lingering bad feelings from Iowa and the caucuses, and that coming certainly when you discuss what happened between Senator Ted Cruz and Ben Carson, and Cruz's supporters telling caucus goers that perhaps Ben Carson was going to drop out of the race. So Carson called him out on it.
To think that I would just walk away 10 minutes before the caucus and say, forget about you guys. I mean, who would do something like that?
Ben is a good and honorable man. When this transpired, I apologized to him then, and I do so now. Ben, I'm sorry.
But as you saw earlier, especially with the issue with Christie going after Marco Rubio, this is a space for the governors to try to make a name for themselves. They're going after Marco Rubio. That's what they see is their path to victory here, and that was certainly on full display last evening. Back to you.
All right, Rich, thank you so much. And when we saw that exchange with Senator Cruz and Dr. Carson after Senator Cruz's apology, it almost seemed like Dr. Carson was in a roundabout way saying, you know, sorry isn't really good enough. I mean, when
the damage is already done.
Yeah, when the damage is already done, and my reason for saying that is he mentioned the third tweet that came out just about a minute after the one mentioning that he was taking a break from the campaign trail, and never did he mention suspending the campaign.
And Donald Trump came out firing and said, yeah, the reason you won is because you took those votes, Senator Cruz, from Ben Carson. Tucker, I want to get your take on this. We've been doing a number of interviews here on the show over the past 2 years around the heroin addiction, the crisis in this country, and the drug problem. This came up and was front and center last night, and Senator Ted Cruz was asked about this question, and Governor Christie then came out and seemed to hit a home run on his response. Watch.
This is an absolute epidemic. We need leadership to solve it. Solving it has to occur at the state and local level with programs like AA and counseling and churches and charities, but it also has to occur securing the borders, because you've got Mexican cartels that are smuggling vast amounts of heroin into this country.
This is a disease. It's not a moral failing. It's a disease. I'm pro-life. And I'm pro-life not just for the 9 months in the womb. I'm pro-life for when they get out, and it's a lot more complicated. 16-year-old heroin-addicted drug girl on the floor of the county lockup. I'm pro-life for her life. The 42-year-old lawyer who's taking OxyContin and can't get out of bed and support his family. I'm pro-life for his life. Every one of those lives is an individual gift from God.
So, Tucker, we saw a huge Google search spike around those particular personal issues. How did it resonate up there last night?
Well, I mean, it resonates here especially. I mean, Manchester, you know, if you go to a 7-Eleven at midnight in Manchester, as I did the other night, it's really obvious that opiate abuse is a real problem. I mean, glaringly and depressingly obvious. And it's a problem not just here, but all through northern New England, all through rural America. And that is really one of the key points to remember. If this were happening on the Upper East Side, or even in the South Bronx, it would be on the front page of the newspaper every day. It's happening in places where fashionable people don't live or go. So it's kind of been beneath the radar. Unfortunately, it's a very complex problem, and it's not exactly clear why it's blossomed into this epidemic, but clearly the majority of this heroin is moving from Mexico, not from Afghanistan, Mexico, overwhelmingly. And so it's an issue of border security. A couple of the candidates pointed that out last night, and I think that's a legitimate thing to say. It's factually true, and I'm glad to see this is coming to center stage because it deserves the attention.
Yeah, addiction in America is something that particularly matters to New Hampshire voters, you know, just like it matters about national security and the economy, which are bread and butter issues for people across the country. And it's also why we're doing our special here on Fox and Friends, Addiction in America, because it is so widespread, and we're trying to destigmatize it and solve it.
Yeah.